Yes guys, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we're going to be discussing the top transfers to consider ahead of game week 2. So if you are new around here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button to support the channel and hit a like if you do enjoy this kind of content. Now, before we dip into the top transfers ahead of game week 2, I want to quickly cover off my thoughts on the whole Haaland Kane situation, because of course FPL is kind of exploding right now because Kane blanked and Haaland of course had that brace against West Ham, and plenty of transfers are moving towards Haaland understandably. Now, my thoughts on it right now: Kane in game week 1 was a fantastic option, so do not get yourself down on that decision if you did go with Kane. Naturally, the Haaland owners are the ones laughing right now, but that is not to be worried about. So I think you have two decisions right now if you are a Kane owner. First and foremost, you make your bed and you sleep in it. You go with Kane in game week 2 away against Chelsea, where Spurs could easily get a result there, and we know that Harry Kane on his day is usually involved amongst those 4-goal hauls in game week 1. It was just one of those one-off games really. His underlying stats were still very, very strong. And then we come to game week 3 onwards, are still brilliant fixtures for Spurs. So I do think that the viable strategy could be to hold Kane long term, roll your free transfer into game week 3 to give you much more flexibility in your transfer strategy for your squad. Naturally, I think the move that a lot of managers are considering is doing Kane to Haaland. The one thing I would say about this is if you are making that move for Kane to Haaland, and maybe you've already done that move, I think the best strategy then is just to accept that Haaland is going to be your player of choice going forward over the coming game weeks, because I think once you make that move once, you're naturally going to get that sort of feeling that if Haaland gets a blank and Kane does well, you want to go back to Harry Kane. I think we need to be in a situation right now where free transfers are so important to your squad and so valuable that holding Haaland or holding Kane long term needs to be the move that you make. You can't keep jumping in and out of these two forwards using up valuable free transfers. So make your bed and sleep in it, guys. Whatever move you do go for, I think needs to be your long-term move, barring any injuries. So let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on the current Kane-Haaland situation. Are you sticking with Kane, or have you moved already to Haaland? So that's my thoughts on that discussion, guys. Let's get in with the first top transfer ahead of game week 2. Okay, so while naturally Haaland was the one that picked up all of the plaudits off the back of that brace, we need to remember how fantastic Darwin was in only 40 minutes against Fulham. Now, of course, not the result that Liverpool wanted, a 2-2 draw against Fulham, but Darwin was one of the big positives from that game. You can see the stats here based on that game alone. 9 FPL points and an expected FPL points of 8, which again, this is taken for 40 minutes, so it's fantastic underlying stats. 1 goal, but an expected goals of 1.04. And assists, he picked up that 1 assist as well, with an expected assist of 0.62. So a brilliant debut, well, Premier League debut for Darwin. Big problem with Darwin right now is that price point at 9 million. Now, a lot of managers right now are panicking about Gabriel Jesus at Arsenal. Some people have already sold him. I believe over 10,000 managers have sold Jesus, which I can't really wrap my head around personally. However, if you are one of those managers that has already lost faith in Jesus, you still need that million in the bank to get to Darwin, which is very, very difficult. And on the flip side of the price scale, Haaland or Kane, if you are a Kane owner, and I've discussed it, you're not really going to come down to Darwin. You're naturally going to go sideways to Haaland. And if you currently have Haaland, you would be crazy to sell him for Darwin based on what you saw with Haaland. Now, why is he in the top transfers right now? Volume of transfers isn't necessarily through the roof for him because of that price point at 9 million. But I really do think that this guy is going to be the ultimate differential over the next 5 game weeks. Now, predicted points wise, he's sitting at 15 right now, which isn't necessarily mind-blowing over the next 4 game weeks, is worth noting. He does have that away fixture against Man United, which off the back of that 2-1 loss, that could actually be a better fixture than it is on paper for them. But I really do think that this guy, Darwin, is going to remain a differential over the next 5 game weeks. And if you're a manager that is looking at an early wildcard, potentially around game weeks 5 or game week 6, then I think going in on Darwin could be one of the best differential moves that you could make. Now, of course, fitting a team structure with the premium of the likes of Haaland and Kane, and alongside Darwin, is going to be a big investment of your budget, around 20 million or so. And some managers don't want to go for that heavy-hitting forward strategy. But I really do think that if you can afford it and you can go sideways to Darwin, this is the time to strike now. Palace at home in game week 2, we need to see a Liverpool reaction. I do think we will get it. Man United away, we've seen what Brighton could do to them. Liverpool could easily pick up a comfortable victory there. And then Bournemouth and Newcastle at home with that Anfield crowd behind them. I really do foresee Darwin getting plenty of game time over this period because Klopp can't rely on Jota right now because of that hamstring injury. And Firmino, I really do think Darwin is going to be stealing minutes away from him, if not starting. So while this is a tricky transfer, guys, I do want this one to be in the back of your minds going into game week 2, because if he doesn't come into your teams, I really do think that he is going to be that differential that a lot of managers are looking for if they are going for that early wildcard. But let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on Darwin right now. I think he's going to be the classic case of under 10% ownership throughout the whole first half of the season, and he's going to be a very, very comfortable returner each and every game week. So next up, let's take a look at another player who had a fantastic game week 1. Now that man is going to be the one who actually played against Liverpool in Mitrovic, another player that picked up a brace, the other man being, of course, Haaland. Now, brilliant underlying stats from Mitrovic here. Currently 6.6 million off the back of that price rise. 13 FPL points and expected FPL points at 8.54. Now we have to remember, this is a player that played against one of the best defences in the league. So posting these underlying stats against the Liverpool defence against Van Dijk and Matip is fantastic and really poses quite positive viewing for what the future could be for Fulham as a whole. And based on Fulham in general, they had an expected goals of 1.09. Now, of course, Mitrovic took up the 0.85 of that, but it is really positive to see the sort of football that Marco Silva is implementing at Fulham. And I really do think if they could bring that gun-ho attitude to someone like Liverpool, then they definitely could cause a few upsets over the next 5 game weeks. And you can see the 5 game weeks there. Wolves away, yes, a tricky fixture on paper, but I do think that Fulham are going to be full of confidence going into that game. Brentford, Arsenal, Brighton and Spurs. The following 4 for that are very, very difficult, and probably the reason why some managers are a little bit hesitant to drop some of their premium players down to someone like Mitrovic. Now, the one thing that I will say about Mitrovic, he's going to be absolutely guaranteed game time on penalties and the talisman in this Fulham side. And naturally, with the way that Fulham are playing, everything funneling through Mitrovic, he is going to be naturally a bonus point magnet in this team. So with him being at the heart of the goal chance creation and goal scoring potential, that means that he is going to be in and amongst those bonus points every single game week when Fulham do have a positive result. And I really do think that sometimes focusing on those talisman players that get guaranteed game time is sometimes the best strategy you can make. There are going to be players coming out the woodworks, potentially Broher at Chelsea, for example, who we think, oh, he could be brilliant FPL explosiveness. But really, we want to be looking at these players that have guaranteed game time, and Mitrovic absolutely ticks that box. Now, the one reason why a few question marks about him is just because of those upcoming fixtures. I really do think if you want to go for a cheap option, this is the man to go for. But for my personal preference right now, I do think that Mitrovic is a game week 8 onwards player. The fixtures from then really do swing for Fulham. They look absolutely fantastic. And that is going to be around the sort of time managers look to wildcard, if not slightly before. And if we do see this sort of football that Fulham are playing right now and the sort of influence that Mitrovic is having from an attacking perspective, I really do think that Mitrovic is going to be in many of our thoughts when we are building a wildcard squad. Naturally, the template right now is 11.5 million forward and then Gabriel Jesus. But we could see that template shift for more of a 3 forward front line. And I cannot imagine Mitrovic not being in the conversation when we do come round to that inevitable point later on down the season. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Are you interested in Mitrovic right now? Have you seen enough against Liverpool to pile in on him? I know over 10,000 managers have already moved in on Mitrovic ahead of his game week 2 fixture away to Wolves. Me personally, I'm going to hold off just because of those fixtures being quite tricky for Fulham, in particular away to the London clubs in Arsenal and Spurs. So last up, let's take a look at the last transfer consideration ahead of game week 2. And this time it is going to be a defender, and it is going to be Arsenal's Zinchenko. The new signing had a fantastic game week 1, picking up 12 FPL points. Of course, getting that good assist from a corner routine, which was really interesting to see Zinchenko being in and amongst that one. 8.5 expected FPL points and expected clean sheets of 0.33. Now, not necessarily the reading you want to see from a defensive perspective, but this was against a decent Crystal Palace side who we are expecting to do quite well under Patrick Vieira. Again, away against Palace is a very tricky game week 1 fixture, so it was very impressive to see Arsenal picking up that result against Crystal Palace there. Now, Zinchenko has been touted as a brilliant 5 million option and someone that we have been discussing over pre-season. But I think the big question mark for Zinchenko right now is whether his minutes are guaranteed. Now, Tierney has returned to training with Arsenal. We are anticipating him to return in either the Leicester and Bournemouth game. Now, with that brilliant performance for Zinchenko, I think it is worth noting that I do anticipate him to remain as the left back in this Arsenal team. It isn't a situation where Arsenal have, like they had Tavares playing left back, and it was just desperate to get Kieran Tierney back in the team. This is an experienced Premier League left back who has been at the Champions of England for the last few years. And I don't see him being displaced from this Arsenal team anytime soon. And if that moment was to happen with Kieran Tierney playing left back, the anticipation that there is potential for Zinchenko to move into centre mid in this Arsenal side. Now, I think my big worry right now is that the worry of Zinchenko is, are we going to see him potentially have minutes taken away from him because of the 5-sub rule? If Arsenal get into comfortable situations against the likes of Bournemouth, against the likes of Fulham, could we potentially see him getting rotated from time to time and coming off after the 60, after the 70-minute mark? And that's why I think with Zinchenko, getting a bit more understanding about his influence in the team might be the positive move to go for. Now, again, it is worth noting with Arsenal in defensive ownership, I do think that either Zinchenko or Ramsdale is the best move for you to consider in the coming game weeks. With those great fixtures, especially Bournemouth, Fulham, and even Villa, I think having an ownership in Arsenal is decent. And if you move for someone like Aston Villa's Cash or Digne, and you're really not sold on them, I think the sideways move to Zinchenko, if you can afford it, could be a really wise move over the coming game weeks. But if you're a little bit worried about that rotation risk, and it is a little bit of a worry when we're Tierney, then maybe look sideways to another alternative in the likes of Trippier or even Kyle Walker, whose game time is a little bit more guaranteed. But with 14 projected points over the next 4 game weeks, it's 6th best for defenders under 5 million. And again, I think that is based because of the slight risk of minutes for Zinchenko. But check out the stats on there, guys. Please do ignore the stats per 90. That's my fault there. That is based on just one game alone against Crystal Palace in game week 1. So guys, that is going to wrap up the top transfers ahead of game week 2. My advice would be, and this is a bit of an FPL Nacho top tip here, if you can roll your free transfer, I highly recommend it. In the opening game weeks, it's really, really difficult to get an understanding on where teams are currently and where players are. Some teams are having to roll out players because of injuries in their squad or play tricky teams. For example, Arsenal against a tricky Palace side, exactly that. So my advice would be, if you can roll a free transfer, do that. While transfers are going to be tempting and knee-jerk moves are going to be the temptation, I really do think rolling that transfer is the most valuable use of your strategy. And going into game week 3 with 2 free transfers and flexibility to move your squad in any direction is going to be the perfect move that you can make. So let me know in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on your transfers ahead of game week 2. And again, if you want to support the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a like on that video. We will massively appreciate it. And of course, we have daily content dropping each and every day. So hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.